These 15 forgotten British desserts taste better than anything currently trending on TikTok, and yet hardly anyone knows them anymore. Once upon a time, they were the highlights of school dinners, Sunday tables and festive feasts, but today they've nearly vanished from our kitchens. How could so much tradition and flavour simply be forgotten just because we stopped talking about what used to be taken for granted? If you don't want these classics to disappear from the pudding bowl forever, then join us in rediscovering them. And now, enjoy perhaps the sweetest journey through time you've ever taken. Cabinet pudding was sometimes called Chancellor's pudding, and it was a grand steamed dessert made in a really decorative mould so that when it was turned out onto a plate, it looked amazing. The pudding itself was a mixture of sponge or bread, which was soaked in custard with dried fruits like currants, raisins or candied peel spread all around. Sometimes even cherries or preserved fruit were arranged around the mould so that it would look even better when flipped. Once steamed, it was usually served hot, drizzled with more custard, or sometimes with a sharp sauce made from brandy or sherry to cut through the sweetness. The flavour was rich but not heavy, with the creamy custard binding everything together. Cabinet pudding was a treat for special occasions and was even said to be a favourite of Queen Victoria herself. Today, it has all but disappeared from home kitchens, but in its day, it was the very height of elegance. Carrageen pudding was a popular light dessert in coastal regions, especially in Ireland, where Irish moss seaweed used to grow a lot. Unlike heavier steamed puddings, this one was nice and wobbly, kinda like a jelly. The secret was in the Carrageen seaweed itself, which when boiled with milk released a natural gelling agent, and after straining, the milk was left to set and flavoured with vanilla, lemon or nutmeg. The result was a pale, softly quivering pudding with a faintly marine note that blended surprisingly well with sugar and spice. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, it was not only enjoyed as a dessert, but also regarded as a pretty healthy dish. Many older generations will remember it being served chilled, perhaps with a spoonful of jam on top. It was never flashy, but it carried a quiet sense of seaside tradition and thriftiness, turning something gathered from the shore into a comforting household pudding. Flummery is one of those delightful old puddings with origins linking it to Wales. Here it was originally made from oats steeped in water until the liquid thickened into a smooth, tangy jelly. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Flummery had evolved into something far more refined, and it was more like a fruit-flavoured jelly, which was sometimes mixed with cream, wine, or even spirits. Housewives often used moulds to make it look better. The taste was light, refreshing, and just sweet enough to cleanse the palate after a heavy meal. By the 20th century, the oat-based version was largely forgotten, replaced by brightly coloured, gelatine-based flummeries that were inexpensive and easy to whip up. Though simple by today's standards, Flummery carried with it a touch of elegance, the kind of pudding that reminded families of celebrations and festive gatherings. Its soft texture and mild sweetness enjoyed by young and old alike. Before Christmas became the centrepiece of winter celebrations, Twelfth Night was the big holiday feast, and the Twelfth Night cake was something you couldn't forget. It was a rich, heavy fruit cake, often soaked in brandy, stuffed with currants, peel and warming spices, then lavishly decorated with icing and sugar ornaments. A bean or a pea would be hidden inside, and whoever found it in their slice was crowned king or queen for the evening's festivities, making it fun too. It resembled the Christmas cake we know today, though with a more playful purpose. By the 19th century, the popularity of Twelfth Night waned as Christmas Day grew in importance, and eventually the custom disappeared almost entirely. Still, for those who remember it, the Twelfth Night cake was something that was the joy of midwinter. These were not cakes in the sense we think of today, but they're instead dense and made from oats, wholemeal flour, honey, and occasionally dried fruit or nuts. Sometimes flavoured with herbs or a hint of spice, they were festival foods, baked for seasonal celebrations and religious feasts. The texture was hearty, somewhere between a flatbread and a biscuit, with a sweetness that came naturally from honey rather than refined sugar, which was unknown in Anglo-Saxon kitchens. Such cakes were often cooked on a hot stone or griddle, their rustic charm lying in their simplicity. For the people of the time, these cakes were a treat made from the year's harvest, to be shared at gatherings. Eating one today is like tasting a fragment of history, a reminder that even a long time ago, people marked special days with something a little sweeter than their daily bread. For many, the mere mention of sago or tapioca pudding brings back memories of school dinners, where it was often nicknamed frogspawn thanks to its pearly little grains. Sago and tapioca are starches extracted from tropical plants, sago from palm pith and tapioca from cassava root. When simmered gently in milk with sugar, they swell into tiny, translucent beads, suspended in a creamy base. The taste itself was mild, but it was usually flavoured with nutmeg, vanilla, or a dollop of jam to give it warmth and comfort. In Victorian households, sago pudding was considered wholesome and easy to digest, often served to invalids as a nourishing dish. Some loved its gentle wobble, others dreaded it on their dinner tray. Today it's a rare sight, but for those who remember, a bowl of sago pudding carries with it a whiff of nostalgia, evoking both school canteens and the long-gone simplicity of post-war kitchens. Sole cakes belong to one of Britain's oldest food traditions, with roots stretching back to the Middle Ages. Small, round and gently spiced, they were baked around All Hallows' Eve and All Souls' Day as part of the old custom of souling. Poor folk, often children, would go from house to house offering prayers for the departed in exchange for these little cakes. The cakes were usually flavoured with spices like nutmeg, cinnamon or allspice, sweetened with a little sugar or honey, and often marked with a simple cross on top. They were dense, more like a spiced biscuit than a soft cake, with a flavour that felt warming on chilly autumn nights. In some regions, currants or dried fruit were pressed into the dough, giving extra bursts of sweetness. Though rarely made today, sole cakes remain a fascinating glimpse into Britain's festive past. The Queen of Puddings was a Sunday dinner table delight throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. It is a layered pudding that begins with a custard enriched with breadcrumbs, baked until softly set. A thin spread of fruit jam, like raspberry or strawberry, was added over the top. And finally, the dish is crowned with a glossy meringue that is baked until lightly golden. When served, the spoon dips through the airy meringue into the sweet jam and then into the comforting custardy base, making each mouthful a delightful contrast of textures and flavours. It was often considered an economical dish too, since it used up stale bread while still looking like something rather grand. Many will remember it as a treat that combined elegance with homeliness, a pudding that looked fit for royalty, yet was entirely achievable in an ordinary kitchen. Today it is seen less often, but those who grew up with it can never forget the joy of its three distinct layers. Manchester tart was a school dinner staple across the north of England well into the 20th century, though its history stretches back to the Victorian era. It consists of a short crust pastry base spread with raspberry jam, topped with a thick layer of creamy custard. To finish, it was usually sprinkled with desiccated coconut and adorned with a bright red glacé cherry in the middle. The result was a dessert that combined crisp pastry with soft custard and the tart sweetness of jam. Children either loved or absolutely hated it, but it remained a fixture in canteens for decades, with variations including sliced bananas under the custard. At home, it was a practical pudding, using inexpensive ingredients and bright colours that appealed to families. Though it has fallen out of favour, many still recall it fondly as part of their regional identity, a taste of childhood that spoke of both frugality and comfort. Few puddings are as quintessentially British as the jam roly-poly. Known affectionately as shirt sleeve pudding or dead man's arm because it was often steamed inside an old cloth, this sweat-based roll filled with jam was once a fixture of school and home dining. The dough, made from sweat and flour, was rolled out, generously spread with jam, and then tightly rolled before being steamed or baked. When sliced, it looked like a cheerful spiral of red and golden pastry. Served hot with custard, it was sweet and pretty comforting on a cold evening. The sweat gave the pudding a rich, slightly dense texture, perfect for satisfying hungry children or hard-working adults. It became particularly popular in the 19th century and carried through well into the mid-20th, remembered fondly by generations of schoolchildren. Though it has slipped from modern menus, the jam roly-poly is perhaps the most iconic of all old-fashioned puddings. Tipsy Laird is Scotland's proud answer to the English trifle, and it once featured prominently at Hogmanay and Burns night suppers. At its heart is a layering of whiskey-soaked sponge, custard, fruit and cream. Though recipes varied from household to household, some preferred raspberries or other soft fruits, while others leaned towards jam or stewed apples. The whiskey gave it a warming kick, earning it its tipsy title, while the custard and cream softened the richness into something indulgent yet comforting. It was traditionally made in a large glass bowl, so you could look at all the layers. Much like trifle, it was designed to feed a crowd, so it was normally the centerpiece of family gatherings and festive meals. Today, it is less common outside Scotland, but those who tasted it will recall its unique blend of homeliness and celebration. Syllabub is one of Britain's most charmingly old-fashioned desserts, dating back as far as the 16th century. Originally, it was a frothy mixture made by milking a cow directly into a bowl of spiced wine or cider, allowing the warm milk to curdle lightly and create a creamy foam. Later versions refined the process, whisking cream with sugar, lemon juice, and wine or sherry until it formed soft peaks. Everlasting Syllabub was a thicker, more stable version that could be spooned into glasses and left to set in the cool. The flavour was light, zesty, and faintly boozy, making it both refreshing and indulgent. The beauty of Syllabub was that it was simple, since a handful of ingredients transformed into a delightful froth. Though it has largely vanished from modern tables, it remains a symbol of Old English hospitality, when even the simplest ingredients could be turned into something delicate and celebratory. Few puddings are as famous as Spotted Dick, and you may be able to guess why, considering that name. This traditional sweat pudding dates back to the 19th century and earned its name from the spots of dried fruit, usually currants or raisins, that stud the dense pale dough. The pudding was typically steamed in a cloth, producing a soft, rich texture that was both hearty and satisfying. I was served in thick slices and almost always with custard. The taste was subtly sweet, the fruit providing bursts of flavour in every bite. For many, Spotted Dick was a staple of school dinners and family suppers alike. Lemon posset is a dessert with medieval roots that has stood the test of time, though in very different forms. In its earliest days, a posset was a hot drink of milk, curdled with ale or wine, sometimes taken as a remedy for colds. Over time, it evolved into the chilled, creamy pudding many remember today. The modern lemon posset is wonderfully simple. Cream gently heated with sugar, then thickened with fresh lemon juice. As it cools, it sets into a smooth, velvety custard without the need for eggs or gelatine. The flavour is bright and refreshing, and the rich cream is balanced by the sharp tang of citrus. It was often served in small glasses or bowls, perhaps with a shortbread biscuit on the side. Because it required so few ingredients, it was a favourite for thrifty households. Yet its silky texture gave it an air of refinement. For older generations, lemon posset embodies the beauty of simplicity, a pudding that tastes both indulgent and refreshing in equal measure. Although Flummery began life centuries ago as a Welsh oat-based pudding, by the 20th century it had transformed into a brightly coloured, jelly-like dessert that many people loved. The modern version often involved whipping evaporated milk into fruit-flavoured jelly, creating a light, mousse-like pudding that was cheap and yummy. Children adored its wobble and colour, while thrifty cooks appreciated how far a tin of milk and a packet of jelly could stretch. The flavour depended on the jelly used, like strawberry, raspberry or lime, but it was always sweet, fluffy and refreshing. Served chilled, it was perfect for summer teas, birthday parties and simple family treats. You probably can't find it on tables these days, but for those who grew up with it, the sight of a wobbling bowl of flummery is enough to bring back fond memories of childhood celebrations. And that's it for today's trip down memory lane. Give it a like if you remembered some of the desserts you used to have, and don't forget to subscribe for more information and nostalgia. See you next time.